You're listening to The Standard Angler, and my daddy's the host.
All right, well, special thanks to my sweetheart for the introduction, and welcome to the Sustainable Angler Podcast. I'm Rick Crawford, angler, sustainability consultant, and founder of Emerger Strategies. This season, we're launching the Sustainability Blueprint, a deep dive into how fishing and outdoor brands can grow, meet retailer demands, navigate emerging regulations, and protect the places we all love. If you're part of the fishing and outdoor industry, this is your roadmap to surviving and thriving in a changing world. Let's build better brands and protect what we love together. Today on The Sustainable Angler, I'm joined by Hazel Horvath. Hazel is the founder and CEO of Ecolytics, and we talk about how her software solves sustainability data management problems, helps companies streamline their B-Corp certification process, and avoid greenwashing by providing substantiated data. We also discuss how retailers now expect brands to measure and improve their sustainability performance, what it means to be a B-Corp, and how anglers can look for certifications like 1% for the Planet and B-Corp to influence their purchasing decisions. I'd also like to mention that Ecolytics, the Sustainable Angler, and Emerger Strategies have partnered. So if your brand needs a streamlined approach to becoming a B Corp, reach out to me directly or mention the Sustainable Angler for a discount off your first year subscription of Ecolytics. And before we dive into the interview, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly grateful that you take the time to listen to this podcast. I hope these conversations inspire you to take action for nature. If you're enjoying the show, a quick free way to support it is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is also airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, OM Radio, 96.3 FM. This episode of The Sustainable Angler is brought to you by Emerger Strategies, Ecolytics, and a New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging. Hey everybody, Rick Crawford here. If you're running a fishing or outdoor brand, you probably got into this business for the freedom, a desire to work in an industry that you actually care about, and to protect what you love, not wrestle with sustainability scorecards and compliance regulations. But here's the truth. Retailers and regulators are paying close attention, and the brands that can answer clearly are the ones that keep their products on the shelf. That's where Emerger Strategies comes in. We help brands get retailer and regulator ready, and we help you make the business case for sustainability, so compliance strengthens your brand instead of slowing it down. That's why I built the Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint. It's a clear, practical roadmap that shows you what matters, what's coming, and gets your sustainability house in order in 30 days. If you want to protect your brand, your margins, and what you love, you'll find the blueprint at emergerstrategies.com.
Thanks so much for having me, Rick. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, Hazel, I thought we would get things kicked off just talking a little bit more about your background and then maybe get into the origin story of Ecolytics. So how did you get started on this path?
Yeah, of course. Background and origin story is always a great place to start. I'm very much a subject matter turned founder. So I was working in the sustainability field from multiple angles, working in both corporate sustainability, some international development, and just seeing for businesses how difficult it was to track the data needed to get started with sustainability, which made that timeline to actually improve even longer for companies. In my specific background in data analytics and seeing how for businesses being able to shorten that timeline and shorten that path would be a real benefit for them, for not only spending less time and money trying to get that data, but also helping them get to those improvements faster and make a positive impact on the planet too. So yeah, that work took me from, I was working internationally in Switzerland and China, here in the States, and then having that insight, started Ecolytics in 2022. And have just been working and growing it ever since.
Awesome. So for folks that don't know anything about Ecolytics, what is it that your software does? What do you do? Can you give us some insights there?
Yeah, of course. So Ecolytics is a single platform for sustainability. We really focus on helping companies, specifically B Corps and mission-driven businesses that are reaching those highest levels of sustainability, create the infrastructure for them to do that work. So we have tools within the platform that help them measure, set goals to improve, and report and showcase everything that they're doing, all aligned to these standards. So we focus on B Corp primarily, but can also help businesses with things like CDP reporting, EcoVadis. So we build that, again, that infrastructure for companies to be able to have actionable data and work on sustainability much easier than going through all these manual processes that are scattered in spreadsheets, which we see so often. So if you're listening and hearing that, you're not alone if you're managing everything in a spreadsheet right now.
Yeah, I can speak firsthand a little bit. Well, not a little bit, a lot. So in Emerger Strategies, we've been helping clients measure and improve their sustainability performance. And to your point, when I came across Ecolytics, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, like this would be such a huge time saver, because the data is the biggest hurdle for most companies. It's like once they understand where to pull the data and where to find it, depending on how many locations they have, it can be super time consuming. It's really difficult to manage through email change. You're like emailing back and forth, and then you have 100 thread email where you're going back and looking for information. So yeah, I love that Ecolytics has that capability to more efficiently collect and manage the data. So I'm on the sort of data front. I know for a lot of outdoor brands that may be listening, this season of the Sustainable Angler is called the Sustainability Blueprint. So we're highlighting different tools and companies and people doing cool stuff in sustainability. But for a lot of outdoor brands, sustainability reporting feels super overwhelming. So can you elaborate a little bit more on what Ecolytics does in terms of its reporting capabilities?
Yeah, so to first talk a little bit more about that measurement piece is we provide opportunities to automate and integrate with existing softwares that companies already have. So that allows there to be very little manual data collection, like you talked about. And so we're able to calculate the company's scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, as well as water usage and waste. So we're seeing that full environmental footprint of the company off the bat. And then we also have tools to help companies evaluate their impact on their stakeholders. So that's more in the social metrics, kind of big bucket category, but having it tailored to really what the stakeholders in the business are. So whether that's looking at your impact on your community, your employees. So tailoring that to your specific business needs, rather than putting out a ton of different metrics that don't make sense for your company. So once companies, finish that measurement piece, they then can set up goals to improve and share that.
Yeah. So like, for example, I think a lot of companies, I work with a lot of brands that are, for the most part, just starting their journey in sustainability. And so a lot of them initially are just like, what do we even measure? Like what are the KPIs behind some of this? And I'm wondering if you can You mentioned it, I think, but can you just touch on some of the environmental and social data points that companies are typically reporting on through Ecolytics?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally empathize and hear that a ton too. Just getting started with sustainability can feel so overwhelming that
Yeah.
there's so much almost like academic jargon and terminology that creates a little bit of a barrier to even take action for businesses or to understand how it will actually help them. So when we talk about sustainability, we talk about it a lot in terms of thinking about your company's operations and looking at areas to reduce costs in some cases, because a lot of impact on environment ends up being a cost to your bottom line, whether that's paying for energy or waste services. So looking at areas to reduce or looking at those areas to reduce them also ends up having a positive bottom line impact for your company as well. So that's where when we work with businesses to getting them to start measuring, also talk through that how helping tracking this data will help them look at their business in both sustainability, but also as looking at that real triple bottom line, which is their impact on people, planet, and profit.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of companies, at least that I work with, and I'm sure that you'll do too, right? Is they think that like energy, wastewater, for example, right? Those are like the core three of an operation from an environmental standpoint that you can collect data, you're paying for those services, right? They just see that as a cost of doing business. And so they don't usually most businesses aren't diving into that data, but when you start to dive into it, like take for example, I think the statistic that I saw this year because I experienced it I work from home, so I experienced it at
Mm-hmm.
my home, was energy costs went up 13% on average in 2025. So if you're just going, well, then our utility bill is our utility bill, and you haven't explored ways, well, first of all, you haven't set a goal. Like, what are you trying to do? Like, are you trying to achieve net zero emissions? Are do you have some type of a goal of, hey, could we be more energy efficient, whatever it is? And then you start looking into the data, you can start to see where you're going, oh, wow, well, I didn't realize that we could do X, Y, Z, and it could reduce our demand for energy, which then reduces our cost, and it's also reducing our carbon footprint. That's a great story, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge part of, I think, sustainability that gets overlooked by most companies. They just go, well, it's how much it costs. It's just our energy bill.
Yeah, exactly. And not diving into it deeper.
Yeah, yeah. And so I guess maybe we should sort of preface some of this and that our merger strategies is partnered with Ecolytics. So we're excited to be able to bring this solution and use it as a tool for our clients. But I'll also say that I'm using it for merger strategies. And so it's really cool. I've explored B Corp certification for a long time, and I think I'm finally going to do it after almost 10 years. I've just had a really small footprint that I track. But anyway, my point in saying all of that is that what I really like just as a user of the software is that direct integration. Like I'm able to connect my utility bill. And for me, again, that's easy, right? It's not huge, but if you're a company that has several locations or many locations, like that becomes a huge time saver to be able to integrate directly with your utilities, pull the data, and then automatically calculate your emissions. Same thing, right? With you could you could connect with like QuickBooks, for example. And so how
Mhm.
does that help with companies who are trying to measure scope three emissions?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because scope three emissions are looking at your company's supply chain. So that's often something that companies don't really have a ton of control over and ends up being a majority of a lot of companies' emissions. Um, So what we, with our software, allow companies to do is just by an integration with an accounting software like QuickBooks, we're able to do those calculations of carbon on the company's purchases and suppliers. So they're able to have insight into where their actual purchasing has an environmental impact and where that footprint lies for their business, which also helps companies realize that when they're doing a ton of business travel, right, to take that specific part of scope 3 emissions as an example, that if they're doing a ton of business travel, they may not realize it or might not realize that they actually would probably save a lot of money in carbon emissions if they were using alternative modes of transportation or maybe change that meeting to remote. So it again allows you that insight into decision making and is an opportunity to look into your suppliers and see with your purchases if there is an opportunity to work with a company that is more sustainable, like a B Corp or another company that is also mission driven and cares about their impact.
Yeah, and for those listening, if you're a brand owner or you work at a brand, just for a very oversimplified uh, explanation, there's three different scopes of greenhouse gas emissions. Scope one is mobile combustion, so company owned or controlled vehicles, and typically like natural gas for heating. Scope two is purchase electricity. And then scope three is your entire value chain, which is like, I don't know the exact statistic, but from my experience is anywhere from 80 to 90% of most companies' emissions, because it's everything upstream. So if you're an apparel brand, right, it's the farmer that grew your cotton, all the way to making your T-shirt, to all the way to shipping your T-shirt to the end of life. And so depending on how far you go on scope three. So scope three is super complex. And what you're saying is by tying in to the accounting software, rather than having to pull all this data and find it, it's being pulled for you and giving you the data that you can use to make more informed decisions to reduce some of those really impactful, high impact areas of your scope three.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is great. So one of the things that emerger strategies that we do is trying to help companies that are selling into major retailers. And so what's happening, just to sort of paint this picture for everyone, is that basically every major retailer, whether it's Walmart, REI, Bass Pro Shops, they have some level of things that they're asking for on the sustainability front. So I ran an analysis, and it's like basically all of them are asking for greenhouse gas emissions now. So that particular part of Ecolytics is huge, but I'm curious, why that's one of the reasons that sustainability is critical. But in your opinion, why is it becoming critical for brands to measure and report their sustainability performance today in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already talked about a couple of reasons, especially in terms of operational costs. And then the one that you just brought up is definitely a big one too, getting into these major retailers who, as we were just talking about scope 3 emissions, when they're making those decisions for their own businesses, right? If you look at Walmart's 2050 sustainability plan, in it has information about how they're looking to decarbonize their own supply chain. And so when they're making vendor decisions, it's kind of an easy vendor decision that if your company isn't able to provide that information to them, that could be a ding against your business. So seeing those as the main ones, I think also for especially outdoor brands, you have to think about the consumer as well, as I'm sure every outdoor brand out there is always thinking about. And so a big piece of that is your consumers being people that are enjoying the outdoors. And so the environment is to make this a little bit more maybe on like the technical side of things, but the environment is a stakeholder in your business, right? And so for your company thinking about that impact on the environment. If you're not, you're really ignoring a big stakeholder in your company. And so we, especially for brands that are customer facing, are selling to consumers, just the statistics show over and over again about how people in making purchasing decisions are looking for sustainability, and they're looking for especially verified sustainability claims. They want to see that your company is living its values, and isn't just saying that you're doing it, but is really evaluating your practices and is making a positive impact.
Yeah, I think particularly fishing outdoor brands who are solely dependent upon a healthy environment, it's where
Mm-hmm.
people use their products. Like, it makes all the sense in the world to be able to demonstrate that you're committed to minimizing your environmental impact. And so, but the way to do that, right, and to avoid greenwashing, is through substantiated data, which Ecolytics helps provide. And then if you choose to become like B Corp certified, then you have a third party certification validating that you are doing all of these things. And so um, I want to take a minute here and recognize, because this is going to be released in March, this episode, and it's B Corp month. So let's talk a little bit more about that. If you had to give your overview of B Corp, let's hear it from you.
Yeah, would love to. I think B Corp is definitely something that's becoming way more recognizable. But if this happens to be the first time a listener is hearing about it, it's a social environmental impact certification that companies can get. So it's only for businesses, not nonprofits. And the common ones that you might think of are like Patagonia, Cotopaxi, and then some food brands like Ben and Jerry's. So you see it really across many products that are sold, including in the outdoor industry as well. And what it is a full evaluation of your business's social and environmental impact practices. And I've been saying the word stakeholder a bunch because the whole idea of B Corp is that your business is no longer just driven by your shareholders or your profit, so like profit at all costs, versus looking at this new model, which focuses on your business's stakeholders. So profit is very much included in that. Profit is an important part of sustainability. You wouldn't be able to have a business, right, if you weren't also making money, making revenue from your company. But layered on top of that is looking at how your company actually impacts the world around you, the people that buy your product and work for your company. So it allows you to have this really holistic and deeper look at your business rather than just looking at a P&L sheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think and particularly in fly fishing, there's a couple of B Corps. There's Mayfly Outdoors. They own several brands, like Able Reels, Ross Reels, Airflow Fly Line, and then I know Fish Pond. They are a B Corp, and obviously Patagonia. But I love that it's a very rigorous certification. Like, to complete the B Corp impact assessment is very time consuming for most companies. So how is Ecolytics helping to streamline that and make that process easier? Because there's a direct way that Ecolytics works, right, to help companies basically make that process a little bit easier for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can tell this is something I'm obviously very passionate about. And why I really started the company was because seeing how for businesses, it was not a lack of desire of wanting to do this work and see the benefits. It's more that when you're looking at an extremely manual process that takes, a ton of time and money for your company to then get that end result that you get the benefit. So many companies were going through this process so manually because they saw that benefit for their business. So with Ecolytics, we provide a way to shorten that timeline, make it more efficient for your business, so you're able to still get those same benefits for your company, but with less time and resources. So that allows companies to make the decision even easier as well when they're going to go for a third-party verification like B Corp that really proves that their business is socially, environmentally impactful and does that audit of their company. And so what our platform does specifically, I talked about the measurement piece, but then we help companies align that all with the B Corp standards, which now companies, it's become the movement is continuously evolving at the B Corp movement, and actually new standards were released this year, which require companies to keep up with an audit cycle. Previously, companies were only evaluated on their most recent year every 3 years. So now companies are really going to have to continue their practices, but as companies are going through this process, they're seeing a real benefit because the standards are more tailored to their size and sector. They can really choose to make the changes that are most impactful for what makes sense for their specific business. And so as we help companies through that process, we help them, make sense of the standards and how to tailor them to get the most value for their business.
Yeah, and a huge time saver for a lot of companies too, with some of the for working with Ecolytics, that is. And I know y'all are a B Corp. So I'm curious, from your own experience, but also helping a lot of other businesses achieve B Corp certification. What have been some of the positive benefits aside from, I feel like, altruistically doing the right thing? What are some of the benefits or even case studies from your clients that are using Ecolytics?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that when companies come to us that have gone through this certification before, we'll often hear that it took them 2 years to get through the process before using our platform. And after using our platform, it's really a matter of weeks in preparation and team time to be able to go for submission. So that in and of itself is a huge benefit for the businesses and their sustainability leads that have been doing this work manually, again, because the business sees that benefit of B Corp. And then I think also within the process, there's always those opportunities, kind of like we talked about with on the operations side of things, of being able to dive deeper into that data and really make it actionable since it's available for the companies. So they're able to look at opportunities to save costs and just have a better understanding of their businesses. So that's definitely within the Ecolytics platform, those benefits. And then also an additional B Corp benefit, kind of that you highlighted about it being B Corp month. And it's just an amazing community that I mentioned this before talking about supply chain, but we see once companies are B Corp certified, it is such a benefit that they might not even realize upon before certification, but of being a part of this network and community that really wants to work with each other and support businesses that have gone through the process, and they can have that verification that they can trust are doing the right things.
Yeah, where my head goes with it is, I don't think it exists yet, but let's just say the vision would be, right, that you've got a company who has a sustainable procurement policy, and maybe that policy was work with 50% B Corps or 100% B Corps, like if they were able to, right? And that certification is a way to validate that the company is doing good, right?
Yeah, and it also makes it a great opportunity too in looking at that supply chain, because even for some of your brands, right, they might use professional services companies as well. They're B Corps in that realm too. So looking at your entire supply chain, not just the products you buy as a business, but everything that you purchase, and being able to have the opportunity to make the most impactful decisions there.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. I'll mention too, because I'm a 1% for the Planet 1% for the Planet member also, and y'all are
Mhm.
too. Who are some of y'all's nonprofit partners, just out of curiosity, that y'all are working with?
Yeah, we work a lot with the B Corp community.
Yeah,
So our nonprofit partner is obviously B Lab, and uh, I'm also on the board of B Local Mid Atlantic. So in talking about the B Corp community, there are entities called B Locals, which are local networks for B Corps that are all over the country, that are, again, just a great point of reference and support for businesses that are part of the movement.
cool. Yeah, I love that. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
We set out with a New Earth project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. You know, people send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project, is it's like, we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is, and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
All right. So how do you think that we talked a little bit about like retail pressure, right? How are you seeing like retailers like REI, for example? Like, I know that they, like, B Corp is a preferred attribute for products that they sell. How is that shaping the demand for Ecolytics? Are you seeing that as a driver for folks that are going, okay, well, yeah, we should consider this, and if we are, we should use Ecolytics?
Yeah, definitely. The B Corp movement has been growing exponentially, and I think it will grow even more with, as I mentioned, the standards have changed. Because as retailers like REI, as well as in plenty of other industries too, are starting to set, stricter standards and vendor requirements, so that they're able to better evaluate the companies. Because, like I said, in going through the B Corp process, you're getting this entire evaluation of your business. So a retailer like REI knows that you've gone through that audit process when you are B Corp. So that kind of de-risks for them that they have to do all that vetting on your company. So we kind of, if there's any data security nerds listening, that there's a process for all software companies you have to go through called SOC 2 compliance that like does a big audit of your business and looks at all your practices and all that. And we see B Corp the same way for sustainability, that you're looking at every single practice your company does so that you know that there's less risk of working with you as a vendor. So for making those decisions as a retailer, B Corp is a great one to include because of the rigor and the data that's needed to back it up.
Yeah, I love that. So, like, to paint a picture, you're a fishing manufacturer, and you're a B Corp. You become less of essentially a liability for a retailer, right? Because they know that through that B Corp process, you have vetted your suppliers and you have sent out supplier surveys and you've done the work. It's kind of like an easy button for a retailer to say, okay, they're B Corp. Like, it's a way to differentiate, I would think, if you're trying to get in there too.
Yeah, and this is maybe more on the food products side, but more and more retailers are B Corps, like Erewhon, the grocery store, or Grove Collaborative, e-commerce site. So as that also, there's growth in those areas as well. It becomes even more of a competitive advantage.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. So in working with different companies and brands, what are maybe some of the biggest mistakes that you see that some of these small to mid-sized brands make when they're trying to tackle sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, I think breaking it down a little bit for the business and making everything data driven, I think is the most important. And I say that because we see a lot of times companies taking kind of like one-off actions, like they might uh, you know, make a donation somewhere, or they may purchase carbon offsets or something like that. But then since it's not connected to an overall strategy or connected within their business, they're not able to see the actual benefit to their company. So like doing all that involves some storytelling if you want to see that marketing benefit, or making the operational changes. So the just doing a one-off action, I think sometimes discourages companies from like, oh, we try sustainability, we did one thing, versus viewing it as what it really is in practice is this continuous improvement journey for your company. Because especially as companies grow, you have more of an impact, just because in nature you grow. Every company has a carbon impact, I think sometimes that can be discouraging for businesses, right? Because they're like, oh, we're growing and this is a great thing, but so now like our carbon emissions are bigger, and so is that a bad thing? We don't want to be looking at this, right? So but I would say the biggest piece is you can't manage what you don't measure. And so if you're not actually able to concretely define what those impacts are for your business through data, you're not able to actually see your entire company. So for companies just getting started, looking at sustainability in pieces and getting on that continuous improvement journey, I very much recommend starting somewhere is important, and just keeping with it, consistent action over time.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Because a lot of companies will not develop a strong strategy for why they're doing this and what to do it. And they do a one-off. They don't necessarily see the benefits because they didn't have the right data points to prove it, right? And so I think that's a great thing that I'm finding that I'm liking about Ecolytics and using it even for my own consultancy, right? Is it's just it's easy for any company, right, to overlook some things or not, and this provides, I think, consistency in data management and quality of data management that just makes it much easier over time to start seeing those benefits when you're measuring the same things year over year. And it sounds like now that's what B Corp is asking companies to do, is to annually measure it. Yeah. Okay. You briefly mentioned, the storytelling part of this, right? Of sustainability. And so, that's what we do here for the podcast. That's one of the reasons this podcast exists, is to share sustainability stories and hopefully inspire action. But how can brands use sustainability to tell better, more authentic stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think one piece, I think that's both frustrating, but can be, when done well, can be used to your advantage, right, is the increase of greenwashing and sustainability claims, and companies leading to an overall confusion of what we should actually share as a company and what makes sense. Because sometimes we'll see companies that are doing great practices, are doing everything right, but maybe not sharing it. So they're not seeing that value of bringing things consumer facing.
Yeah.
And so I think it starts with your company's mission and being able to define that clearly and share that. And then everything you're doing in sustainability should be backing up, that mission and what you want to do as a company. And I'm obviously always going to talk about the data side of things, but that having real data to back up the storytelling helps companies have the confidence to share what they're doing too, because they know that they can point to specific numbers that show their improvements or show areas that even they can improve. Because I think as we've seen this trend and increase in greenwashing, on the flip side, what we've seen with a lot of businesses and what our platform helps companies do is have that ultimate level of actually transparency. So even if you didn't hit goals, you can share why. I think the modern consumer today, especially the younger generation, likes seeing that from businesses versus feeling like everything is kind of shrouded in boardrooms and not shared actually with their consumers, which again, I'm going to bring it back. They're an important stakeholder in your company.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point. And by the way, that's one of the ways for, I mean, I know that you know this, but for folks listening, substantiating your data is a strategy to avoid greenwashing, like having that data. So it's a huge part. You can't say, hey, we're working to be more environmentally friendly. Like that's so vague. That means nothing. But if you have data that says, hey, we started tracking our waste and we conducted a waste audit and we found out that we were diverting 80% of our waste from the landfill. And if we get 10 more percent, we can be a zero waste business. That's a great story. That's a real story, and it's backed by data. So you can confidently say that. If anyone wanted to fight you on that, you'd say, okay, well, here's the data. Check it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that's really, I think that for, any brands or marketing folks who might be listening, the data is the basis for the stories, right, that you can tell, and you have to have the data. You can't just make stuff up. So that's what I think Ecolytics does a great job of, is compiling that data for you, making it easy to collect it. But then also, I know that y'all have kind of on the lines of the communication front, y'all have the ability to then essentially create a sustainability page for a company's website, right?
Yeah, exactly. So speaking to that transparency piece, there for B Corp or just in general sustainability, the B Corp standards have built into them a number of requirements that are either policies or data, like a climate action plan, that need to be published publicly. And so because everything's built into the platform, having an external facing microsite is something that is really helpful for businesses, because they can just push live to the page what they're doing within the platform, rather than having to pull together something with their IT team and marketing and all that stuff just to share. And so because we're able to help companies measure their data in more real time, and they're using the platform to set goals, they're also able to share that progress in more real time as well, gaining that trust back with the consumer.
Yeah, I love that. That's a cool feature of the software. All right, so bringing it back to sort of, my audience being mostly anglers, I think. But how can anglers and outdoor enthusiasts think differently about the products they buy when it comes to sustainability or sustainability data?
Yeah, I mean, I think we always recommend to look for third-party verification.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that is the most recognizable certifications like B Corp, or you mentioned 1% for the planet as well. These certifications that you see that require third-party verification rather than just saying, I'm green on a packaging. I don't think anyone believes that anymore. So I think consumers in looking for products with those certifications, it would be my first recommendation. And then I also think looking at the materials for products, that I just like everything is plastic these days in multiple whether it's rayon or other, other materials. And so obviously plastic is kind of unavoidable, but I think especially looking to see if things have been recycled materials and those sorts of things are also, because they have to be on products, are information that is going to be correct. So avoiding that greenwashing and kind of getting direct to the source.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so going to shift gears just a little bit and talk a little bit about the future of technology. So I'm curious, from your opinion, I mean, where do you see sustainability software and data going over the next, 5 years? And are we moving toward real time like impact tracking, which maybe we already are? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're getting closer, and I think we're excited for Ecolytics to be a part of this movement and journey, because I think as these actions like becoming B Corp certified become easier for businesses through software, I think that just makes the decision a lot easier for businesses to take on things like third-party verification or just starting sustainability, because they're lining up with, able to see right in front of them exactly what data that they need to track and areas of improvement. And so I think it's a really exciting time. I think in sustainability software, I think it's been moving from just compliance based to actually making things action oriented. And I think that's maybe software in general too has kind of moving from that as well. So getting to that more real time and being able to have better insight into your business, I think then just obviously leads to services like yours of helping companies improve and take advantage of what they're able to, the insights that they're able to have in their business.
Yeah. All right. So if you could give one piece of advice to an outdoor brand that hasn't started its sustainability journey yet, so they've never considered it, they're just, what would it be?
I mean, my advice is just to get started, to start somewhere. And so I think the obvious places to get started are bringing it back to the operations piece that we talked about.
Yeah.
So looking at what those costs are for your business and thinking about them with a sustainability lens, I think will be a good exercise for your company in starting to break down what sustainability actually means, because it can feel so big and nebulous and confusing, and bringing it back to, okay, what does this actually mean for your business, I think is the best place to start.
Yeah. And two, I mean, you bring up a good point. What it's a lot of this scope 3, depending on the size of your company, there's some things that you can't control. And so, but your operations, you usually can, right? And so you can do things that have a measurable impact on your bottom line in your business and your operations. So I think that's great advice for any brand who's just thinking about this. It's okay, what can we do? And looking at your interviews, your water and your waste makes a ton of sense. And I think too, you had alluded to it earlier, but sustainability to me is like a person trying to become the best version of themselves. And so it's like, I think you said continuous improvement, and that's it, right? It's a never ending continuous improvement story. You don't actually, newsflash, there's no such thing as a green product. Everything makes an impact, right? And so it's like, how can we do it better? And I think that can help drive innovation. So I think that was a great point that you made earlier. Like, hey, look at this as a continuous improvement process. And the way to do that is consistently measure it, I think.
I love that. Making yourself best version of yourself. Because I think sometimes the decision-making and getting started with sustainability often falls with marketing, which is a great area of your company to be sharing that story. But ultimately, it kind of needs to come from the inside out first, for that to be genuine and effective. So I think when companies are deciding, okay, like, why would we do this? It should be coming from internally first.
Yeah. And another great point that you made there is, I think that when sustainability becomes important to the founders, that's really when they sort of set the tone, right? I mean, if you're doing it as a PR exercise, you're probably not very motivated to actually improve. But if you have a founder or a CEO who believes in what you're doing and why you're doing it, that has huge impact. So that's another great point. All right, so we're getting closer to the top of the hour here. So I want to ask you a question that I ask everyone, right? Is, we know that our planet, right, is facing lots of environmental threats. It's climate change, it's biodiversity loss. We have a growing global population, right? And it gets really easy to get depressed, frankly, about the state of the planet. But what gives you hope about the future? And I'll let you answer that.
I'm going to give a very on-brand answer, which is the B-Corp movement. That I think as we move in the trajectory we've been moving with business and the way that companies have been so shareholder focused on the next quarter, that you're not looking at the long-term longevity of your company, much less the rest of the planet and all the people that occupy it. And so B Corp was started by business leaders that wanted to do business differently, to see business in the long term and create sustainable businesses that would be around for a while, while not having a negative impact on people and the planet. And so I think, as I said, the movement is growing. And so as more and more businesses decide to join the movement, it's been really just great to be a part of it and to be an enabler in it. And then also to see business leaders really live out the fact that this was just some idea almost, I think this was back in almost 10, 20 years ago, that things got started with the B Corp movement, and now seeing it in fruition with over 10,000 businesses signed up, and proving their social environmental impact is just really empowering and powerful to see.
Yeah, love that. All right. Well, I appreciate so much your time, Hazel. This was super fun. I also appreciate your software that you've created, because I think it's wonderful. And also want to take the opportunity to thank y'all for sponsoring this podcast. This is a great way to shine a light on Ecolytics for any brands that are out there that are thinking about ways to be more sustainable, or become a B Corp, or, like you said, or need to submit to CDP or any other additional functionalities that the software has, just managing your data. you should definitely consider Ecolytics. I would be remiss if I did not say while we're on here that if you mention the Sustainable Angler and you're curious, there is a discount associated with your first year's subscription. So be sure to do that. I hope this drives businesses towards y'all, Hazel. And yeah, just really want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Rick. It's so fun.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to head over to emergerstrategies.com for all your sustainability consulting needs, and check out our new The Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint, which is designed to get your sustainability house in order in 30 days or less.